Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PMA-CIBC Summit Series. Our fourth in the program this year has just been an enormous success, and we have a real treat for you today. This is very, very special with representatives from both the U.S. and Canada on the design issues facing us in this COVID period and as we come out of it. And what's that done to real estate and our housing market? So really, really interesting panel coming up. It's my job to talk to you about this market a little bit and where we've been and where we're going. My goodness, you're going to hear a lot about comparables to last year. April of 2020, of course, was the bottom of our market as we were in the depths of the COVID calamity, and the market, of course, at its lowest ebb. So comparisons to this year to last are going to be exceptionally exaggerated, off the charts. Don't pay attention to it at all. It's meaningless. What is meaningful is the performance in the last couple of months. March, of course, was a world record in resale housing here in the GTA at 15,000 unit sales. That's a singular 1 month record that had ever occurred. Now, again, you're going to see a lot of reporting about that, a little bit of hysteria about affordability. Not that that isn't an important issue that we're facing, but at the same time, this kind of surge in activity has been self-regulating. And I want to point out that's very important. The consumer has kind of taken a deep breath. And in this period from March to April and into May, the data will be out next week, and you'll see that that also will have cooled a little bit. This third wave that we faced here in Ontario, in particular in Toronto, scared a lot of people, a lot more than what we have had previously. The media jumped all over the issues of COVID again for the third time in the variants. The impacts will prove to be significantly less than what we had seen before, both in morbidity and cases. So the good news is that it's dissipating very fast as people get vaccinated. We topped 50% of one vac. That's a tremendous achievement, and we'll slowly get to two. You can see in the U.S. cities, the U.S. markets have come out of lockdowns for the most part, and we're following. We're going to be those 60 to 90 days behind most U.S. markets, but that hasn't stopped real estate. It just cooled it a little bit in April, and that was a good thing. Coming off to about 13,000, down about 13% from this peak that we reached in March. Normal's 8,500 a month. So we're still producing significant performance out there. But the consumer pushed back on the price escalation, 32% in the year, 32% on average of price escalation in the GTA. So they pushed back a little. Finally, that's good. June 1st of the new OSFI rules on qualifying the federal government, bring them into the play. They come in effective June 1, and that will hit the entry-level buyers significantly. It won't hurt move-up market or the investor market particularly. The real story, though, is affordability. Toronto, on the hit parade of least affordable, hit fifth in the world at year end, not including some of the surge in prices we experienced in this first quarter. So number 5 least affordable city in the world. Now, that's great for a seller, not so good for a buyer. And you're going to see lots of press coverage, media concern about housing affordability. The interesting thing is that prices have stabilized into April and will again in May. And those numbers will come out next week. And supply will be increase a little bit. I think houses came off the market significantly in April because of this third wave concern and fear, and that'll start to build back. But prices stabilized, and the actual sales volume came down a little bit, and that'll be the same pattern for May as we look forward to what's about to happen next. So this self-regulating is a very, very good direction that we're going to until we're out of lockdown. Now we'll be out of lockdown probably in 60 to 90 days and back to what might be some semblance of normal. The one thing that you're going to experience is that the wallet has been locked down for 16 months, and it will be released with a vengeance. In July and August. You're going to see a surge in retail entertainment spending that we've never experienced before. This may take a little pressure off real estate, where we've been the kind of one source of direction we've been experiencing in the last, of course, year. Now we'll have finally some competition for that purse or wallet, and where our dollars are being expended. So watch for that coming. It's going to be a real surge, and unfortunately, perhaps a little inflationary, but that's another story for another day. The supply is really the issue, and I just want to touch on a study that you should get your hands on by Jean-Francois Perrault, economist with Scotia, who released a study last week on supply in the Canadian markets of housing. We are at the lowest level of all G7 countries in the number of housing units per thousand population. And our population continues to grow as we reinforce immigration. Remember, it didn't collapse. It didn't go to zero in COVID. It hit still 155,000, of which 75 to 80,000 of that comes to Toronto. As we reboot to 1.2 million over the next 3 years, we've got a continuing population inflow and no supply. The supply of new housing at its lowest level in history. The supply of resale housing very, very tight. So we have a supply issue. And Jean-Francois points out very, very beautifully, perhaps one of the best studies I've seen in a long time, where Canada's position is relative to the UK, to the US, and the G7 in general. And since 2016, this proportion of housing supply against population growth has declined. It's grown tighter. So it gets worse. The supply can't catch up to the population growth. Well, strong demand, no supply. What's that mean for prices? Hopefully we'll see some stability in the market as we reach this sort of apex of affordability issues within Toronto. And that will keep a bit of a lid on, but no question it's going to continue to escalate, hopefully within a more balanced framework. But that's very hard to predict. But we know that it's going to continue to rise because supply just can't meet demand. There's 4 tables to this leg of supply I'd like to point out. We need, according to Jean-Francois, 100,000 units should have been produced more than we did in the last 3 years. If we want to just meet the average of G7 supply around the world, we need to produce 1.8 million new housing units. Enormous task to try to bring supply back with demand. He's calling for a federal group to be put together, provincial, federal, municipal development industry experts to try to address this issue of supply. It needs to happen, and needs to happen soon. But there's 4 quick pillars. I'll just point them out to you very fast on how we can turn this ship around very quickly in Toronto. 1, a study of government surplus lands, municipal, federal, provincial. There are thousands of acres in control of governments, which proportionately could be converted to residential overnight. 2, employment lands within the White Belt, the growth area designated around the GTA, have not been absorbing nearly at the level that we've seen residential lands, only at about 37% versus 57% of available lands. So employment lands on the edge, I call this sort of on the edge. A review of employment land surplus needs to be undertaken immediately and see where we can see obvious conversions to residential. Could be done overnight. The 3rd pillar of the supply chain is shopping centers. An amazing thing happened in 1995 in what we called the Kings on King Street, Parliament and Spadina. And we relieved all zoning in those 2 neighborhoods at that time to bring resurgence to those neighborhoods. Well, you know what's happened today, 20 years later. Absolute incredible rejuvenation of those 2, what at the time were derelict warehouse communities, now vibrant, fabulous, living, breathing communities. The same could be done with shopping centers. Relieve those parking lots. 50% of every shopping center around the GTA is a parking lot. And the joy is the infrastructure is already there. Find a policy that allows shopping centers to move forward with residential conversion, or at least portions of it. I think can be easily done and very, very fast. Certainly the big guys are already at it, Oxford, kind of like Fairview. RioCan already on that plane, but there are many more thousands that could be converted or changed or its use applied to residential. And the fourth leg is the change in the Planning Act. It was removed in 2005, which restricted a developer's ability to bring forward lands outside an urban boundary if they paid for the servicing. That was removed, and that needs to be reinstituted. Municipality can still say no, but at least allow the private sector and the development industry to be able to bring forth lands and pay for those services and bring greater supply to the market more quickly. Those four pillars would turn the supply ship around in the harbor very fast. That's my message for today, and I'm going to turn this over to Chris, who will introduce a sensational moderator, Pete Cummins, and let's hear about the design side of this industry and how we've been so incredibly adaptive to this marketplace. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Andy. Good morning, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for the PMA-CIBC Summit Series. Before we get started with our program, we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. Because our audience is cross-border, if you are joining us from outside of the Toronto area, I encourage you to learn more about the traditional territories where you live, learn, and work. So welcome. My name is Chris Markovic, and on behalf of PMA Breather Realty Group, CIBC, our title sponsor, and our media partner, McEwitt, we are thrilled to have you all join us. Now I'm pleased to introduce Peter Cummins, who will be hosting today's session with today's superstar design panel. Peter?
Thank you, Chris. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us today. It's an exciting edition of the summit. Chris and I have been talking about this for quite a while, about taking a look at how the new normal is being dealt with, and I'm thrilled to moderate this session. And we've been working with the team over the last few weeks, and it's so great to reconnect with some people that I've known for years, and I really appreciate their association. To help us unpack and explore and understand where design is headed, where we are joined today by 5 accomplished designers who specialize in residential development, both low-rise, single-family, and high-rise multi-unit. What's great today is that while technically our borders closed, it's not to this group. We're sort of hitting all sides, pardon me, of North America with a really exciting team. First of all, I'd like to introduce Sean Swayze and Ruth Lynch of PDS Studios. I've had the pleasure of being in meetings with them for over 15 years in sales office, presentation centers, their model home designs. They know I'm colorblind. When I'm in a meeting, they'll ask me, "Pete, what do you think of these colors?" I just roll my eyes and they all start laughing. Anyway, Ruth, Sean, if you could introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name is Sean Swayze. I'm a principal at Patent Design Studio. And
I'm Ruth Lynch.
Yes.
Also principal at Patent Design Studio. So we've been in operation in the city for well over 40 years. In our previous iteration as Brian Patton and Associates, and Sean and I took over the business almost 5 years ago now, and it's grown substantially since then. So we're very thrilled and happy to be here.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to be in the place that we're at, and the GTA condo market is what we specialize in, and it's ready to explode, essentially.
Yeah. I love your look. In fact, that you don't have a specific design, that this is always the way we do it. You adapt to environments. And every time I go through one of your model homes, I go home, I kick my house. Next up is a new association I have, luckily through an associate at PMA at 360 Focus. Jeannie Sims' sister, Amy, is here joining us from Miami, Florida, where I've had a lot of family grow up there. And when I first got on the phone with her, within 15 minutes, I felt like I'd known her forever. And I love, Amy, what your start every day with your kids is where you say, "New day, your way." I've been quoting you all week.
Your day, your way.
Yeah. Amy, if you'd introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Annie Shim. I'm Jeannie Shim's little sister. I've been living in Miami for 18 years now. The first 8 years, I kind of bounced around from different developers. I've worked for pretty major developers who specialized at the time in high-rise luxury condos. Now for the last kind of, another 8 years, I've been doing my own practice. So I'm the principal at Shim Projects. We have a very small little team. And currently we're working on probably 10 projects, and they all vary. So what's interesting about Miami is, we have, developers who reach out to me for, high-rise residential redevelopment. That's actually been a really big kind of trend as of late, just because a lot of these older buildings are just kind of due for that. And we're also working on a couple of unique kind of mixed use projects, as well as a couple of hospitality. So we're across the board, and yeah, it's really great to be here. I love speaking with Canadians. I miss Canadians, and I still very much identify with being Canadian. And I make that very clear to my husband and to my children.
Annie, I'll call you in the middle of February snowstorm and see how you're enjoying Miami.
Yeah, exactly.
Next, I like to call a close friend of mine from Denver, Colorado, Doris Perlman. I had the great fortune years ago when Andy first brought me to the International Builders Show to sit in on this seminar from this woman called Doris Perlman, Possibilities for Design. Well, I never took so many notes, and year after year after year, I've had the pleasure of sitting amongst 1,000 people listening to Doris. And what I love, Doris, is that you not only say, here's where we are, you say, here's where we're going. And I always watch, and you're always right on. So it's a nice roadmap to where we're going in residential design. Doris, if you tell us about yourself.
So thank you, Pete. The praise is certainly nice to hear. I am not sure it's totally warranted, but I will take it any day of the week. Anyhow, again, I'm Doris Perlman. I am the principal and founder of Possibilities for Design. We're an interior design and merchandising firm. We work throughout the United States and have worked in Canada, which is a story in itself. And that's one of the places that, again, I met Pete and Andy. And we specialize in really creating interiors that help you sell homes and amenities that appeal to the buyer. So again, we do model homes, we do clubhouses, and we do public spaces as part of our practice. And most importantly, we love doing what we do. So again, thank you for inviting me, and I'm delighted to be here.
Last time I saw you, actually, we were on the stage accepting an award for that project you worked on up here in Toronto.
That was great.
Yourself and Ann Marshall and for Mandarin Homes. So here's my screen share.
Right. Oh my gosh.
And look, these two beautiful women, and I'm in a black suit. I look like security. Anyway, next, I refer to Richard as the patient architect. And I say patient because when I get into a meeting, and he lays out all the floor plans for a project we're going to be working on together. And I'm like, can we move this column? No, Pete, we can't. No, but seriously, can you take a look at that column? Does it need to be there? Yes, well, Pete, and then he pulls out tracing paper. I love it because he still can draw right on the spot. He does a few things. Yeah, if we had a beam, okay, fine. You're good? Yeah, I'm good. So I really enjoy working with Richard. I've had the pleasure of working with him for over 18 years, and I think I made him gray. Introduce yourself, Richard, please.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for having me. And it's been great working with you all these past number of years. I think one thing as a designer, you have to realize you need a thick skin, right? So you have to deal with all the subtle nuances and the particulars of every client you work with. But that's part of design. Thank you for having me again. My name is Richard Vink. I am founding partner and principal designer for BA3 Designs. And we specialize in low-rise residential housing throughout Southern Ontario, from Ottawa to London and beyond. And generally, we stick to low-rise single-family homes. I've been in the industry for over 30 years.
Thank you, Richard. Last but definitely not least, I had the pleasure of being introduced to Seth Hart from DTJ Design through Doris Perlman. And when Doris and I were, talking about the topic and the new normal, she goes, you need to talk to Seth. He was on this 8 months ago. He did not sit around waiting for things to happen. He started to make them happen. So Seth, we're really glad to have you part of the team today, representing Boulder, Colorado, two great Colorado places, Denver and Boulder. And I'm back in Vail next year, dudes. I'm out there. Seth, welcome to the panel.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me join you guys. So I'm Seth Hart. I'm an associate principal at DTJ Design, which is easy for me to say because I've said it so many times over the years, but can be a tongue twister. But yeah, we're here in Boulder, Colorado. We also have offices in Atlanta and Austin, Texas as well. And we are a architecture, landscape architecture and planning firm. And we have a big bandwidth of work that we do, but I'm primarily focused on single family residential and community amenities, townhomes, things of that sort. And just like Doris, I think she said it best, is we really enjoy what we do and have a big passion for this. So glad to be here.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate your coming on to this panel today, and you're looking forward to your insights. Just before we get started, I want to share a personal moment that came to mind when Chris asked me to moderate this session. In fact, when he started to ask me, he said yes, right before I could finish. We're fortunate to have strong connections with this group. And my introduction to two new great people, Amy and Annie and Annie and Seth, and again working with Richard and Doris and Ruth and Sean. I have a sort of an affinity to the Southwest, which was exciting to bring in Doris and Seth today, because owning a home out in Scottsdale and going off to Los Angeles and Orange County, trying to steal ideas and bring them back. And I love going to sales centers in California. I'll go, hi, I'm Pete from Toronto. I'm here. I need to steal 2 ideas. And so I get some great stuff. And again, going through touring Doris's models and designs that she does right across North America. But I really like sort of her Southwest. She brings the Southwest maybe differences or similarities or comparisons to our Eastern team. So I'm really excited. One thing I just want to mention about this industry, we're so used to adapting to a market condition. Markets go up, markets go down, we bait, we switch, we redesign, we relook at things, we reboot it. We're used to market conditions changing. 14 months ago, we had a world condition. And I think that what's really great about this industry is within 3-4 weeks of going, what is going on? Like, is this for real? Everybody said, okay, so this is the new reality. Let's deal with it. Let's get on with it. And that's the theme of today, of not the typical what's hot, what's not, but what was the disruptor and what are the changes that specifically relate to our new normal, which I think has got some real positive aspects to it. So I think let's get started. I want to hear these people, not me. So first, Doris, we're hearing about the changes that are on our doorstep, how the world's going to look after the pandemic when the new normal arrives. And we're at the
muted. Okay. Pete, I think, can you hear me now? Everybody, if you can, shake your head, because we are muted. Okay, all right.
So Doris, it's what are the top 3 trends that will become this new normal?
So number one, we are feeling renewed. We are coming out of the pandemic, so we're a little ahead of you guys. But I would say that 12 to 14 months ago, we were all petrified and just so incredibly stressed. And one of the things that we all kind of have agreed on is that health and wellness are huge. And one of the ways to create a sense of health, wellness, and relaxation and calm is biophilic design. And biophilic design in our world is bringing nature inside. So as we go, we can talk about something that we just titled Nature's Way. And the idea is that it starts out with obviously an emphasis on color. I have done a color forecast for a National Association of Home Builders for 20 something years. And We are seeing green back in the palette in a big way. We are seeing woods, lots of them, and that kind of cognac color. So going through that, every vendor that we have has also picked up on that. And so as you look at it, I don't know if Dow Tile has a presence in Canada, but we are seeing that Dow Tile has embraced, again, the natural elements, and you can see those dots across the top of the page. And they are, wood elements, elements that, again, a tile called Vivify that creates that green look. And then as your eyes travel, you can see a messenger green sofa. Which we kind of love, a wall that is a growing wall that we are trying to incorporate in lots of our designs, along with interior wood elements, and those are panelized, and we are using those again to create that inside-outside addition. And last but not least, Kohler has certainly jumped on the bandwagon with a motion censored faucet. So all of these things were there, but they really now have become more and more important to us. And as we move to the next, the second of things that I think are changing, we have seen home obviously become very, 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 very important. As Pete said, you are all in lockdown in Canada. And one of the design styles that we embraced about 10 months ago was something called Hygge. And Hygge, or Hygge, and I'm never sure how to say this correctly, is a Scandinavian design style that creates a warm, fuzzy, just great feeling as far as being within our homes. But coming on strong, Forbes magazine called me and asked me to talk about something called Japandi. And I mentioned this to Peter the other day, and he went, Japandi, what is that? And so what I would tell you is that both Hygge and Japandi are very directed at, number one, texture, minimalism, and intent. And so as we move, we can see in the upper right-hand corner, the Hygge or Hygge look as far as a warm, cozy, fuzzy interior. That was done here in Denver, Colorado. But as you look to the left, that dining room certainly has an essence of something that was mid-mod and now could be called Japandi. And that is a minimal approach, again, but with intention. And last but not least, I think that that living room at the bottom right-hand corner was something, living room, great room, that people felt really had kind of an Asian influence again. And so we were proud to have that on the cover of a periodical, and that was cited for what we felt that Japandi would bring us. So it's Hygge today and Japandi tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doris. I appreciate that. It seems like your interior is just feeling warm and comfortable. Sean and Ruth, your team has been on the forefront in Toronto on multifamily high-rise. When we were talking last week, you were just saying you both were indicating over the last 14 months that's been a big, steady focus of PDS. What are you seeing? What are you seeing as the changes in the last 14 months in condominiums?
Well, I think that, as Doris was saying, that the focus really is on comfort. People are just wanting comfort so badly now. We've all been deprived of any kind of like social interaction with people, the outdoors and such. So bringing the outdoors inside is really, really important with all these beautiful natural materials, woods, porcelain stones. If you had asked me 10 years ago if we would see as many plant shops open up, I would have said no. But on every street corner in Toronto, basically, there's a new boutique plant shop, and because people want to bring that connection from outdoors inside.
And then I think growing out of that is a bigger focus on wellness-based activities, wellness-based things that support wellness and health. So in our high-rise developments, the development of the amenity package has grown substantially to include much more focus on a sort of full body of options for people to develop both mentally and physical health. So we're doing, of course, the usual fitness rooms, but it's grown substantially to include yoga rooms and meditation rooms.
Very big meditation rooms.
And then of course the focus on self-directed fitness options. So that's been a big one for us.
And exterior fitness as well. A lot of our projects are producing incredible outdoor amenity spaces that include personal training areas with faux turf and just a place to stretch and have body.
Even in our cold climate,
even in our cold
fitness
climate, exactly,
is still really critical to people.
Yeah,
we're working on a couple of projects now where the outdoor amenity is actually as large, if not larger, than the indoor spaces, including full spa amenities, hot, cold pool, plunge pools, all that kind of thing. So it's really been a big focus.
And another part is also parcel storage. I mean, everybody over the last 14, 16 months has relied basically single-handedly on Amazon. So all these poor concierge people are being inundated with literally hundreds and hundreds of packages a day. So
concierge people who are literally buried in parcels.
So parcel storage and organization is massive as far as programming these amenity spaces.
Yeah. And I think the last is the focus on building workspaces, spaces within the condominium community that allow you to still operate on a business level. So meeting rooms, but really workspaces that are kind of public-private kinds of workspaces. So because people want to be with people, bottom line. So spaces to allow them to perch with their laptop, to be in the community, but still be operating in a business world. I think that's probably
those are the biggest focus right there.
We did have some slides to share, which we did not. So I don't know if we can do that now.
Absolutely, we'd love to see them.
Right.
Give us a moment, excuse me.
And here we are. Sorry, we're not as slick at this as Doris is. These are a few slides that sort of what we're talking about. This is exactly that kind of workspace that we're discussing. It's quite a large space. It actually borders a ravine property, so it's even particularly beautiful because of that. But we've developed a fireplace lounge area on one side, a private meeting room space on the other, and then a common workspace that bridges those two elements, all facing with a two-sided fireplace. We bring in that warmth and that comfort. This kind of little perchy place facing the window where you can, again, just sit with your laptop, place in the center where you can gather with a group.
Go to the next. So this is a great project downtown Toronto, actually. And this is very, very based on wellness. So we have our meditation room at the top slide. We want it very kind of zen and calm, almost back to that Japan-y kind of reference. Below is the juice lounge that is just off of it. It's just a place for people to go and hang out and once again, just be seen. And one thing that we really are now focusing on talking about that Japan-y is Wabi-Sabi, which is a great saying. It's a Japanese phrase, and it means the perfection and imperfection. So things are more quirky now. Not everything is so structured and rigid. We want to have more kind of theatrical spaces, and that's what we're really emphasizing now.
Yeah.
We'll go to our next slide.
No, I think our next is going into the other. I think. Can we keep going? I think we'll stop.
Okay. I think one of the things that came out of our conversation, and everything that you're talking about now, was that when we were talking about lobbies, and you said, Pete, they're different now. They're actually a sense of community. When you walk into your building, it's like that connection, which is usually in a high-rise forum is usually more impersonal. It's like you get in the elevator into your suite and you stay there. But I think just everybody wants to get out.
Right.
They do. Absolutely.
So our lobbies are not throwaway places just going from the front door to the elevator. We're creating breakout areas where people can just hang out. There's always that one old guy in the condo building that hangs around the concierge and talks his ear off all day, right? So I think that people want to get out of their condos and kind of just be seen, just, to have a breath of fresh air, right?
Yeah, but it is about building a community within
Right.
it's a vertical community.
It is vertical community. Exactly.
It's exciting as well too to seeing outdoor spaces being developed, because even though we're in a northern climate, there's still there's a good 8 months that you can enjoy the outside and expand it with heaters. And I think it's amazing how you're really expanding. And it was interesting you said the shift from where your design expertise is being brought to the outside of the building. So it's not just PDS doing the inside, but working on those outdoor spaces. I think that's a big shift. That's a big shift.
Sometimes those landscape architects don't like that so much, but we're
okay.
the
Seth
clients
is good. Seth is busy. He's good.
Sorry,
actually, speaking of landscape architects as well, when I talked to Doris, like I said, on the phone, when Doris and I were talking about this topic and how it would roll out, and within 10 minutes, she says, "You have got to call Seth. He's all over this. He was on this. He's got this." So what are the things that you're doing now, Seth, maybe now that you weren't doing, say, 15, 16 months ago? What are some of the new requests, or what are the things that you're observing that need to be changed?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the topics that we're seeing in single family residential have already been touched on, and in the condo high rise topics. Is parcel delivery is one of the first things that I think we really started to get into heavily last summer, when starting to handle package drop off, secure package storage at a front porch, and how we turn the door to the side so you're not seeing that from the street, but the Amazon guy, the Whole Foods delivery, it's groceries, it's everything now. So managing that, and whether it's temperature controlled, if you are having groceries delivered, or there's all kinds of different tech for opening a door to get in, or having that attached to a garage. So that's something that I think has really started to progress as when this first really hit, that became something that everyone was seen as an important feature to start trying to figure out ways to just design that in so it's seamlessly integrated into the home. Some other things that I think we're seeing is there was a lot of different talk on, are we going to have clean rooms and this, that, and the other thing. And I personally don't think that that's going to be as big of a market push as maybe some people thought it could be. But at the same time, that drop zone, and having a really nice drop zone when you first come into the home, and that owner's entry experience is big. It's kind of all these little compartments of the home that I think is the reason a lot of people are kind of or why the real estate went crazy over this time, is you're realizing that all these kind of insufficient spaces when you're trapped at home become really important. So it's really trying to design smarter, better spaces kind of across the board. But, obviously the home office space is another one that's really big. And I think that that's the one big shift that we're going to see moving forward, is the need for not just one dedicated home office, but flex space that can also be private. The second home office shouldn't be the kitchen island. So we're trying to figure out good ways to create these flex spaces. And the way that's starting to show up in some new floor plans is we're doing big, large back kitchens or dirty kitchens. That's already a popular thing anyways, but we're making that big enough that it could also be a pocket office and have a barn door that closes it off from the kitchen. So whether you're entertaining for a party and you want to close that off so people can't see in, or you're taking a phone call and you've got a little desk back there, and that's kind of the second home office space, that you have that. And then really beyond that, I think another thing that's a big trend is these oasis kind of retreat spaces that are, the haven spaces where master retreats are coming back, places where you can get away and have a little bit of this kind of private oasis, and loft spaces. We're really trying to look at those kind of different than we used to. It used to be anytime you go up to a big single family home upstairs, you get to the top of the stairs and land right at a loft. Now that sound transmission from the loft goes right down to the great room because they're really well connected. Sometimes it's connected with a volume space. We're trying to shift those lofts away from the stairs, privatize those more towards kids' bedrooms, make that so the sound isn't, just going right from the great room to that loft space. So just figuring out ways to, kind of help privatize some of these spaces. And, I don't think that the open floor plan's dead by any means. I've seen some people kind of even going to that extreme. I think it's more about having a place where the kids can be up watching TV. You could be downstairs watching TV and you're not hearing each other. And then, I think fitness is another huge thing that's once again been spoke of earlier. I got a bike and a Peloton app, and that was a new purchase for me this last year. And so, trying to come up with creative little spaces to be able to provide that. And, even some of that, we'll see how much that sticks living forward, because as gyms are opening up and people are able to go back out. Personally, I find it a little bit more motivating to go to the gym, because when I'm in my basement, I can easily stop and say, oh, that's enough for today. So, the gym tends to motivate a little bit more. But, and I think lastly, I'll end with this. I think that the biggest topic that I've seen as far as, healthy home is the most hypoallergenic thing that I think anyone's been really bringing to their home now is everyone's got a dog that ends with doodle. So, because apparently that's the big trend and hypoallergenic. So if you got one of those, there's your healthy home, I suppose.
Healthy dog. I love you. I appreciate your comment about the kitchen island being the office. I found when we were first sort of stuck in our houses for a while, I found working at my kitchen island, I became a bit too close to my fridge. And so that was something I had to work off. But I love your gym comment, because I go down to my basement to work out on the Zoom class. And after about 20 minutes, I go, well, maybe that's enough for today.
Exactly.
Anyway,
it's too easy.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. Richard, in Toronto, what are some of the requests you're seeing that in the Toronto marketplace that sort of relate to this sort of new normal? Things you're observing or what you're seeing in what you're designing going forward?
Well, Peter, I think a lot of what all the other panelists are saying are quite true here in Toronto as well. What I found over here is we've had a real hard time getting ourselves out of that traditional home. The separate living dining room plan, and it's taken a long time for that plan to progress. And finally, just a couple of years ago, that really started changing. And we did start in the early stage, well before COVID, putting in those home offices, libraries, that extra space, which we took away from the living dining room and put into that space. So that trend was already starting pre-COVID. Now that people are working from home, that's even more important. That extra home office space, and as Seth was saying, more than one within a home, because it's not just working from home, it's also learning from home. It's been a real issue here, particularly in Ontario, that schools have been closed, and I think parents will generally in the future want to keep their kids at home more and learn from home. So those spaces are going to be really important, and utilizing those rooms that we never utilized properly before is a really important factor, and that's where I see a real big push right now. I also find the really important right now is finishing off basements or access to basements. Multi-generational families, particularly here in Southern Ontario, there's a lot of immigration, a lot of families live together. They need that space. They want that extra ability to finish those basements off, or due to affordability, rent them out just to help pay the mortgage. So that's a really important factor, and that's spanning from single family to semis to townhomes. It's across the board. I also find, as well as we're talking about, that the open concept, I don't think it's gone either. I think actually we're opening spaces up even more. That traditional living or family room breakfast kitchen, it was still segmented. There's still walls and arches. There's still flooring issues that separate those rooms. I find we're finally taking those out, going to one flooring, whether it's a laminate or a hardwood, throughout, so that delineation between those rooms is really disappearing. So those rooms function a little more, a little better, rather than being more compartmentalized than they were before. So I find that space is really keeping open, but other spaces within the home are being more enclosed to get that private space that you're looking for. And as well, that back area of the kitchen, I find is getting larger. We always found that with the kitchen island, it was an easy spot to throw the kitchen sink and dishwasher on, but it's not the best location for the sink and dishwasher. And we're sort of pulling those away off the island, making that island function better as an eating space, a gathering space, and less as a utility space. But to do that requires a little more cabinet space, and we're finding kitchens getting larger. And as well, walk-in pantries and servery connections to dining rooms. We found at the beginning of COVID, the real issue was, do you have enough staples in your pantry to bridge over the gap when the stores are closed? You saw those rushes on the staples, the toilet papers, the canned goods, all that sort of thing. And I find people really want to make sure that they have room for that and they're saving for it, because it's a real important issue when you don't have access to it. And I think COVID really brought that forward, that things can close. and you don't have access to them. So that storage space is really important. As well, the storage space I find in mudrooms. We're sort of taking the laundry room, which is always behind the garage, putting it on the second floor, and that space now connecting the garage to the house is becoming a mudroom, and we're finishing it off a lot more than we were before. Built-in cabinetry, spaces to store sporting goods, equipment, that sort of thing as you're coming in the back door. So those spaces are getting utilized much better than they were before. As well, larger windows that is all the other panels we're talking about, that biophilic design connecting to nature and to the backyard. I think houses really turned their back on the backyards in the past, and the windows, the access to them wasn't large enough. So we're expanding window sizes, patio door sizes to get that nature into the house. So I see that as a clear trend that will continue on in the future. And lastly, I think exteriors. We're really finding we're breaking away from the traditional architecture, the Victorian and Georgian styles, and we're really moving into the contemporary and transitional designs. And we've seen through sales that is a popular style, and it'll continue to keep moving forward, and it keeps evolving as we go along. And I see that taking over our traditional neighborhoods and architectural styles and moving forward to a more modern design.
Richard, one of the things that was terrific, a project you and I worked on years ago, was where you introduced the option of turning a main floor den into a main floor bedroom, additional bedroom bathroom combination. And while it was slow to take off initially, now on projects where you're including that as an alternate for the main floor, it represents about 40% of the options chosen is that additional bedroom in a separate area, and for people coming to stay with you. So that was really something I noticed in your home designs that became more and more popular. That's something you did 8-9 years ago. So
yeah, you're correct, Peter, on that. And actually, it has really taken off. And whether or not that room is just a home office, but it has the ability to convert to that guest suite, it's been a real popular item. And yeah, for that multi-generational family, there's a lot of parents moving back home that need the assistance, and you know, the kids moving back from university that might need to pop in for a while and stay for a year or two before they get on their feet. And that room is really important.
Yeah, that's good. So now down to Miami, Florida. Annie, it was great to connect with you, and it's an exciting story of a Toronto native now down in Miami and doing a lot of work in Miami and New York as well for some of the top design firms. It was your resume is so impressive, and you're dealing. I know you have a mixed amount of projects, but you've done an awful lot on multi-unit designs for large REITs and landlords. What's some of the Miami aesthetic that you're finding? Has anything changed in the Miami aesthetic over the last year and a half, or what have you noticed different?
I think, you know, everyone kind of who has spoken has touched upon a lot of the major things that I'll agree with. You know, developers are obviously becoming more conscientious of how we're using spaces, you know, instead of where it used to kind of be like, okay, let's see how many apartments we can fit in here. Okay, we have like a club room. Everything was so standardized. Whereas now, you know, I have a developer I'm working with right now in a project in Atlanta, where, you know, I love working with them because they want to talk about every element. I can get really design nerdy with them and really go into how spaces are being used. And because in multifamily, you know, I have another project where we're doing compact units in downtown Miami. They're sold as condos and there's no rental restrictions. So, you know, unfortunately, while, you know, most of the rest of the country is still shut down, I mean, I feel like us being in Miami, we're like in a crazy, weird world, but we're always in our own crazy, weird world. So I find that, you know, what happens is, you know, we're having a lot of developers kind of jump on this no rental restriction game because there's a big, huge boom in development in downtown Miami right now. And I don't mean Brickell, which I don't consider downtown. I mean the true downtown Miami. So for me, it's very exciting being born and raised in Toronto. I love cities, and it's finally nice to see developers who are kind of stepping up to the plate and really thinking about how to develop, you know, within kind of existing areas and neighborhoods. So going back to the whole idea of how we're developing a condo building with no rental restrictions because the units are smaller. And it's interesting, again, comparing, you know, what I know of condo units in Toronto, you know, we've been doing 600 square foot 2-bedroom units forever in Toronto, right? in Miami, it's like this new thing. And as a result, developers are really committing more square footage to amenities. And honestly, right now, if you open up any single, website promoting any Miami building, there's like a serious amenities arms race going on right now. People are like, okay, what can we squeeze in? Let's do a juice bar. Let's do a spinning bar. A lot of, like we're saying, those private kind of fitness rooms, where we have a room dedicated, we'll have 2 Pelotons, maybe a couple of mirrors. We're starting to get on the ergata train as well to do the rower as well. So it's really kind of committing these little individual training spaces, as well as creating, almost like expanding, you may live your apartment maybe within that 600 square feet, but we have 10 different other areas within the building that you can use. I've been working on a redevelopment in South Beach, which is pretty prominent. And, we had a lot of odd spaces. And what we did is we created just co-working areas. And this was even before COVID. This was kind of, 2 years back when we were thinking of planning, because it's Miami. I find that with developments, we're all trying to create a lifestyle and a brand. We've really jumped on this hospitality train. You think of Ian Schrager, who did this at the Delano, back in, back in early 90s. And it really is a lot of the prominent developers have kind of taken that into their hands. So what's interesting for me is because I come from such a varied background. I've worked on the design side, I've worked on ownership side, I've worked on construction side, I've worked so many facets of the industry. So what's cool is that, because I understand signage, graphics, landscape, developers who are hiring me are kind of having me kind of direct the overall creative direction. So not because it's ego-based, it's more about what is the overall master vision, and let's make sure that everybody's vision kind of enmeshes and that the brand really speaks to every single element that's in the space. So, I know this doesn't necessarily speak to the pandemic, but I think what it did for Miami is it really kind of put a fire under a lot of, developers, pardon my French, asses, to really get out there. And, if developers were already owned parcels of land, they were like, all right, we need to activate this. We need to market this. We need to get this, going ASAP. So it really pushed people to do that. And because of this whole amenities arms race, I mean, there's so much to compare to, but overall, it's really driven by what the market wants. And because, people who do want the rental-free restriction places, they're obviously, they're buying it for investment, or there obviously is the option for people to live there full time, but they want the flexibility. I find that in Miami, tourism is still kind of, it's kind of at an all-time high right now. And similar to what Andy had touched upon, retail spending is insane. And I think a lot of that had to do with people sitting at home during the early months of the pandemic, looking at Instagram, and, so many brands have exploded as a result. So another thing, to speak with brands, and this is, I find, is a very American thing to do, is, a lot of developers are partnering with brands. We have the Porsche Tower, we have the Aston Martin Tower, not only, branding with actual, branding the entire building, but also I have a project, the downtown project, we're actually partnering with a pretty prominent co-working company who's going to come in and kind of take in a space. We're also partnering with a New York consultant who does a lot of fitness spaces. So again, these developers are are getting a little bit more creative in terms of how things are done. And for me, I love that. It's very exciting because it kind of steps away from, what Miami has been doing for the last, for the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, which has kind of been status quo. So now it's almost like the pandemic kind of pushed it into overdrive. And now people are, again, we're designing, we're being asked to design so fast. There's a lot of collaboration happening because it's like talking to the landscape architect, talking to the branding people. So yeah, we have our plates full. But overall, I think what's interesting about the Miami style is, again, aside from the amenities arms race, it's really about making an impact. It's all about placemaking. It's all about creating an experience. Pharrell just opened up a hotel on Washington Avenue. And I mean, every weekend, you would think that COVID doesn't even exist because the popularity of this is insane. And they hired a very, prominent interior designer to create the areas. And that's what sells it. It's like design really sells in Miami. Design and branding sells in Miami.
It seems, Annie, that common, and with your comments as well in the Miami design, it's like it's beyond your residential personal space. It's living outside of that,
exactly.
Living and operating. And I think it's interesting too with the the work at home. I don't think it's going to be so much work at home, but work in alternate spaces. Maybe not the traditional office all the time.
Exactly. And I'm sorry, I forgot. I just want to show a couple of images.
Sure,
sorry, I don't know if my time's up. Do you mind?
No, please do.
Okay, cool. Okay, I just want to show you This is a lobby that we did for a redevelopment building. So this again was a couple of years before the pandemic, but you know, what we were already starting to do was open up the spaces. This originally was a very small lobby. So again, creating multiple living areas where, you know, various groups of people can sit. This is a rental building, so we've actually removed the whole idea of a leasing center. Everyone interacts in the lobby. We also have a cafe attached to the front of this building, which again, it's kind of like the tour starts at the cafe, comes through the lobby. So for me, there's a lot of thought in terms of, you know, what are the functional needs of the space? And of course, always allowing for this whole kind of high top co-working table that has all the plugins. I mean, obviously this photo is empty here, but you know, this lobby, when I've gone in, it is often very, you know, is often very full. Back to what Doris really said, to touch upon that, the whole kind of idea of biophilic design. You know, one thing that Miami has is a very strong connection to its arts community. So, you know, this project, for example, I commissioned Magnus, who did these amazing paintings that he, you know, of kind of Florida kind of fauna, you know, and again, bringing the whole idea of plants into the space. Developers are also starting to, whether it's a condo developer or, you know, a REIT, they're factoring budgets for interior plant maintenance, which never really was. You know, I've seen so many terrible, sad plants, and it makes me sad. But so now a lot of that money is being put into the budgets, which is great, and you know, we're running with it. Another little quick image I want to show is a project that I just finished in Orlando, and this was actually originally, when it came out to the market, the intent was for this to be targeted to students. It's located in Creative Village, which is kind of downtown Orlando's newest development. And so this building, there's 14 levels, and on each space we kind of had this community room. So we created different areas. So this one, this is called the town hall. So there's actually a screen on the left side that you can't see, but the idea is for people to sit here, they can plug in and watch a presentation. We also have another area, this is kind of hard to see, but we created another kind of shared working space called the cafe, where, you know, again, you can kind of get together with smaller groups and collaborate there. And again, this is just another shot of that. So again, I think it's interesting that, you know, we've already kind of been moving towards the whole co-working space, expanding amenities for the people who live there. So people really feel like they come home as soon as they walk in the lobby. It's not just like, let me rush through the lobby, let me get to my apartment. It's like, we want people to buy into the whole experience. You know, like, these are all of your awesome co-working areas you can use. And you just show people that they're living outside of their four walls.
That's fantastic. It's very exciting work, Jeannie. And that's such an exciting city. When you mentioned the Delano, it brought back bad memories of how I melted my American Express at that hotel. Anyway, 3 days and months worth of work. Anyway, very exciting. Thank you so much. Doris, with so much of your work, you're right across the US, but you do have a lot of prominent work. I know you've done from Colorado right out to Hawaii. Is there a difference in the residential change from east to west? Like, do you see a change at all in how that happens?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we are doing a ton of work on the East Coast. I know you have a very vertical market in Toronto, but what we are also seeing is that there's a real proliferation of suburban communities where people are leaving cities like Boston and New York and really moving to environments that are, again, more suburban than urban. And with that, I think they have a different view of what they want as their home. I think that everybody here has touched on all of the things that we're finding most important. Number one, obviously, working from home is going to be a part of our lifestyle. So we're seeing that, and we're seeing our clients specifically ask us for real studies, places that people can actually stay and go and become unplugged. And somebody also mentioned, I think it was Richard, quiet spaces in the house. The old living room has now become the unplugged space for us, a space where you could sit and read a book and just spend time away. Kitchens are huge for us, though, as well. And one one of the things that we're seeing again is that whether we're on the East Coast or the West Coast, there's a real move to a minimalist approach in kitchens. And I have one slide here that is kind of a composite of those kitchens. What we're seeing on the left is something that, again, I think Marie Kondo has really identified with, and as everybody probably knows here, she is the maven of all mavens on organization. And what we're seeing is that kitchens are becoming the workhorse of the house. And with that, we need to organize more. Surfaces are hugely important as part of the health and wellness gamut. We are seeing a real move away from anything called granite. I hate to say that, but it's true, to surfaces that are much more non-porous on the East Coast, on the West Coast, and every other place. So the top two kitchens are both quartz and quartzite, and they are becoming much more streamlined and intended. We're also seeing a lot of islands. Somebody mentioned that. Double islands, if you have the room, are fun to look at and again create more conversation and socialization. Copper is coming back on the East Coast and on the West Coast as well, and it is because again it has properties less bacteria that can accumulate. And so we're seeing copper sinks, copper knobs on things. GE has come out with a quad refrigerator so that we can compartmentalize our refrigerator storage. There are also cameras on the insides of refrigerators. So East Coast, West Coast again, but a real concentration on that. And last but not least, the look of large veined product, very, very popular in the East and the West. So that really is my end. And what I wanted to say, last but not least, is that we find, and I want to be part of this panel again, because I've learned so much, that our design and everybody's design is really a response to social change. And we have undergone the hugest of social changes. So again, I loved it. I've learned so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris, very much. And we should do this again, and we could go on for hours. But Richard, I'd like to touch on an element that you've been incorporating a lot, which is I saw a lot on the west side of the country, in California and Arizona, but your courtyard designs, you're now able to, instead of big luxury homes, you're able to include them in production design homes, in subdivisions, and I think people are embracing these spaces. Again, they're very popular designs, not as an option, but an integral part of the plan.
Yeah, they are, Pete. Actually, if I can get Leanne to maybe pop up the plan on screen. Yeah, we're doing a number of communities in the GT area with incorporating the courtyard within them. We're doing one up in the northwest of Toronto in Orangeville, estate lots, and also one up north of Toronto in King City, where the courtyard is the feature of all the plans. And I think it's a trend moving forward. It works into that biophilic design, right? Where we're really trying to bring the outdoors inside. The problem we have in Canada is they've never been overly popular just because of our weather. But I think we can find ways to help enclose those areas to extend the seasons a little longer. You can heat them, outdoor heating, incorporating covered areas. In this particular plan, you can see there's an outdoor dining area where it's all enclosed except for retractable screens. So, one big thing for us up here as well is a lot of black flies, a lot of mosquitoes, and that really hampers the ability to be outside at certain periods of the year. So if you can screen those areas in, but still be outside, that's a real positive. So that's part of the design here to make sure we can extend that living space a little further in our seasons, so it can be a little more popular up here up north. The nature of the courtyard itself, it really lends itself to allowing so many more rooms to surround that courtyard, so that light, the doors that are there can all open up to that space. So it really brings that outdoors in, and as we've been doing in the throughout COVID, as everyone's really getting into gardening, fixing up the backyard, better utilizing that space, whether it's for outdoor dining, for casual sitting, putting fire pits back out there just to sit out in the backyard, hot tubs, pools, all that sort of thing. Just integrating those spaces into the house itself. So we treat both inside and outside as one space, and that courtyard really allows us to do that. And I think we can continue to do that up here. We've got the ability and the technology to allow us to extend that space a little bit further. And I think it's important just for the overall well-being of everyone who's living in that home, because we're at home a lot more often than we were before. So I do see it as a trend that will continue forward. The limitations we do have here, though, is it works great on large lots, estate lots, big lots. But when we're on smaller lots, it becomes more difficult. We're generally cramming the houses in on these small lots. We're putting the buildings to the maximum footprint, so it doesn't really allow for a lot of courtyard spaces. So that part is a little more challenging on the small lots, but for larger lots, I think it's a real feature we can capitalize on, and we'll just have to find better ways to do it on smaller lots.
Yeah, I think, Richard, it's been so popular and on some of the projects I'm working with you on, and where you're not able to incorporate, I've seen you put in a lot of the 4-panel sliding door systems, which really just bring that outside in. I think, again, it's that whole, like, let's get outside. Seth, with people, we were talking before about what people are incorporating into their home designs. What are some, and you touched on a lot of them, but where do you see going forward? Are the changes that you're doing, are they?
You froze up, Peter, but I'll just kind of jump in on that. I think that I think I know where you're going with that. So, you know, the home office, I think, is definitely the biggest change going forward, the multiple home office spaces. But just as Richard was saying, it's too, is these courtyard spaces. What's interesting is we kind of talked about our market analysis at the beginning of this conversation, is that idea of prices just soaring and attainability getting harder and harder to achieve. You know, density is something that I see and I'm dealing with often as a major trend in architecture right now. And how do we achieve dual office spaces in a 1,200 square foot townhome? How do we achieve really quality outdoor living in that same kind of space, or 900 square feet? You know, that's the thing that we're constantly wrestling with, is how do we create the same creature comforts from a typical single family home into townhome spaces or duplexes, or, you know, any sort of multifamily solution. And I think that outdoor living is one of the biggest things that has come out of this too, because I think that anyone that's lived through the pandemic in an apartment with no deck, you know, or the 5x6 balcony or something like that, is probably the next thing they want, is that they want the yard, they want that fire pit, they want a place to be able to relax outdoors that is their space. And so that's something that we really focus on. You know, roof decks are all the rage right now with townhomes, and, you know, and there's some that we're working on where the roof deck is optional, so you can put that premium on, you know, as a buyer option. Really, I mean, and that just kind of speaks to flexibility, right? We're really trying to design in a ton of flexibility when it comes to production housing. So the buyer has that option to take a roof deck. They have the option to, you know, convert that den office space into a bedroom if that better suits their needs. I've developed a multi-gen plan. That's another thing that we're seeing, you know, coming. You know, it's also kind of attainability. You know, it's this new thing because of attainability, where we're doing these multi-gen plans where there's a whole suite on that ground floor, so that your young child can come, or not young, but, you know, your kids graduate from college, they can't afford a house, so they live in this family suite. You know, maybe they're married, they live there, or it could be the parents that are living there. But then also we've designed one house like that has that multi-gen suite that could also turn into an ADU, so that you have the flexibility for additional income, is that having a separate entrance, or it can also offer as a main floor master bedroom for someone who wants to age in place. So it's just, you know, lots of flexibility, and, you know, outdoor living, all those kinds of key elements are just critical. And as we continue trying to figure out how to crack the nut on attainability, we're seeing a lot of those different options and ADU options and whatnot. So hopefully I didn't quite hear the end of the question, but I hope I addressed
that was perfect, Seth. Thanks. I think from hearing all of you, we're going to have to start having sunscreen stations. We're outside so much. Sean and Ruth, not to give away your trade secrets, we appreciate the how you explain the whole change in community living and condominiums, but what influences you? Where do you get your influences from when you're approaching a new project or a new area that you're building? I mean, you design from, you know, small condominium suites up to luxury high-rise, you know, 3,000 square foot penthouses. What are your influences?
Well, first of all, I have to say the term amenity arm race is brilliant. Like I'm going to be using it now. That is incredible.
Sorry for the steal.
Yeah, sorry for the steal. It's in Canada.
Far away.
So I can't even begin to tell you throughout the pandemic, just being stuck at home, and especially on the weekends when there wasn't really too much to do, the amount of YouTube watching that we did, it's incredible. Like YouTube watching, not, you know, funny things, but like on international travel, international hotels, luxury real estate channels. I mean, it's unbelievable what's out there. And also Instagram is just a massive influence, right? Like what you can see now internationally is amazing. And I think that's basically where we're going with our design styles. We're really thinking of international travel. We're craving some sort of like getaway, right? So our spaces are now more eclectic, and we want it to be more homey,
much more theatrical.
And theatrical,
yeah,
exactly.
And as I think other people have said, there's a sense of a need of a specific identity.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a homogeneous look any longer.
Right.
You want to really identify with the space that you're walking into. It has a very particular look. It has a very particular feel. And as Shauna said, it can often be slightly quirky,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely is yours and is there.
Yeah. Travel is a really, really big influence. I can't wait to go away. I want to go to Miami now.
Yeah, I do too. After what Annie's been talking, of course, Annie was talking about the branding of buildings like the Aston Martin building, the Porsche building. It'd be nice if they gave one with a condominium suite. Doris, I wanted to ask you, what are things that you say we are not going back there? We will not do this anymore in residential design. You just tell your builders we're not doing that anymore.
That's a good question. And let me think about that for a moment. I would say that we are not going back to, I would say automatically, I would have said that we are not going back to super large open spaces, and that we, and you talk about the East Coast, are looking for a little more compartmentalization. And I think that when we are designing clubhouses and areas, again, public areas that everybody has kind of talked about, that what we are seeing or being requested from us are much more individual seating, much more ability to actually get away from the crowd. I know that, again, in high-rise areas that everybody has talked about being outside. I see that as huge, but I also see that there is a lot of intent around creating specific smaller gathering spots. So I would say what we're probably not going back to right away are huge open spaces and huge open rooms.
Yeah, that's interesting. Annie, I'd like to finish off with you. I could go on for hours with you guys. It's so much fun. But Annie, living in a crazy, exotic, nutso city like Miami, that's 24/7. What influences you? The country?
No, definitely not. I mean, obviously, you know, the first question is always like, who is the end user, who's the target demographic, and having worked in so many, you know, again, from super high rise luxury to, you know, like, I worked with a nonprofit developer on a senior housing development a few years back, you know, so where there's like, you know, no budget, just kind of having worked through such various levels of product, let's just say that. I find that consistently, I mean, you know, my overall aesthetic is, you know, always to kind of veer to the minimal, but, you know, similar to kind of to piggyback on what Doris had said, you know, that Atlanta project again, which I'm going to refer to, and again, it's in very early stages. So, you know, I don't really have visuals to show you yet, but with that, you know, that club room, we are compartmentalizing where we are creating a bar. Like, again, it's also this whole idea of bringing that resort feeling into, this is like suburban North Druid Hills, Atlanta. But, you know, we're doing a bar, we're doing a true billiard library lounge. We're creating like small little compartmentalized living areas. Another thing we're also finding is in some of these, the new Rise product that we're doing, or new development ground up, is kind of a chef's kitchen, where you may live in a little 600 square foot unit, but you want to invite 10 friends over for dinner and you want to bring in a chef. Miami, I feel like, every dinner party I go to, it's so easy to find a chef to come. You bring them, you don't have to deal with anything. So that's kind of that's a big trend. And I think, I don't even know if it's a trend. I like to say that Miami is very influenced by the Latin culture, 1,000,000%. Whereas in Toronto, it's funny because you go in Toronto, you go to university, you get your little job, and then you buy your first condo on King Street, right? And this is like a million years ago. So in Miami, when I moved here in 2003, I'm like, awesome, I'm 28, I'm gonna buy a condo, and everything is just, priced out of the market because they're building condos for the second home buyer, for the third home buyer, for the Latin investor. So I think that overall the Latin kind of culture pervades kind of how these buildings are presented. So everybody wants to see a beautiful lobby. It's all about like the drive up experience, the driveway, what art is in your lobby. I mean, I hate to say this, it's very kind of ego driven down here. I mean, it's a fact. And so it's interesting to kind of design around that, because it's all, it's also about creating Instagram moments. And you know what, I want to pull up this one little cafe that we worked on. I hope it comes up. Maybe it may not show the whole thing. Hang on, let me just show you this really quickly, because this was a prime example of how to design a space for this brand. This is actually a Cuban coffee shop. Sorry, these images are so small. So again, here it's like, how do we create drama? How do we create impact? For me, I always put plants, we talked about plants. I always put plants into my projects. My father was a total, loved plants. I married a horticulturalist coincidentally. So I'm always integrating plants into all of my projects. So again, for this project, if you look at it on Instagram, so many models, it's all Instagram moments, them sitting in front of the wallpaper, them sitting on the bench. So for me, it's interesting because it's like, again, it's almost like we're trying to satisfy the objectives of the developer, their budgets, but then we also want to create something that'll, again, create a buzz. People will want to say like, oh, I want to go there, I want to live there. And, as a result, it obviously results in, increased revenue. So yeah, Miami sadly is still very much driven just by all the flashy lights and, kind of like fun elements. So yeah, I would say kind of that's really Miami style. It's really just kind of pushing the envelope and kind of creating interesting things. That being said, we obviously have projects that aren't so crazy, but for the most part, yeah, Miami, and with, again, to speak to that whole amenities arms race, I mean, it's insane, these renderings that you're seeing of like what these people are doing, like a bowling alley and then like a listening lounge. And then, you're seeing 5,000 different finishes that you've seen on Instagram, like everybody is now picking up, aesthetically. I've always loved what the Australians are doing. I mean, I think their look is so clean and minimalist, yet again, kind of fun and whimsical. And that also speaks to kind of, my design background and, where I worked and kind of picking up on different elements that I aesthetically like, but obviously always focus on what the end user wants.
That's terrific. I find with this whole panel, you're to say observant and watching what's going on is really not doing justice to your influences. And actually meeting two great new people in addition to the terrific people I already know, and watching your work over the years evolve and staying fresh and current. And that's always my goal, just keep current. And this has been an exciting panel. We could do a whole day of this. I'm going to the IBS show. We should all be there. In I think, is it Florida this year, Doris? Is it? Yeah.
Florida.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough. You're all very busy, crazy schedules, but to get such top professionals together to talk to our group, and this will be recorded. So if you want to pass it on to anybody, it'll be on our website. And again, many thanks from Chris and Andy, and special thanks to CIBC, Sherry Speakman and Yana for contributing to help keep this going. And I think we get this panel back exactly again, and hopefully my internet will not be as frozen, because it's actually 80 degrees outside here. So I'm going to do a draw. We do a draw. We're doing 3 draws for Skip the Dishes. So somebody can have lunch at their office, home office, wherever their office. And our first winner is Paula Irving at Spark. And then our second winner is Sonia Ribeiro for Skip the Dishes. Yay. And then we have John Reed as well. So Jane will be sending out a Skip the Dishes so you can have lunch on the Summit Series team. And again, my thanks to all of you. Amazing. It's influential and it's been terrific. So have a great day and get out there and get new influences. Thanks so much. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.